Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Cicada. So, the Cicada was introduced amidst the rising tensions in 2740 by Hartford Company Industries in an attempt to capitalize on the growing need for battle mechs. At the time, Bergen Industries had cornered the market in light recon mechs with their Locust, and Hartford Company's only prior experience was building communications and targeting systems. Nevertheless, the company designed their mech to compete directly with the Locust by making it just as fast but twice as large, allowing the Cicadas to carry slightly better weaponry and give it an edge in physical combat, all while keeping costs down. The Star League was sufficiently impressed that they agreed to a limited contract with Hartford Companies or Hartford Co. For a small number of cicadas, using them to replace many locusts lost in fighting along its border regions. The mech's only major issue was faulty heat sinks, although these were eventually replaced in many models with modular sinks. While their base of operations and only cicada factory located on Bryant, Hartford Co. was among many of the victims to fall in the Star League and the onset of the Succession Wars. Although the factory was destroyed, there were a number of built cicadas in storage on Bryant, and its relative position compared to the five successor states meant the planet was the target for many raids. Thus, the cicada found its way into many of the major house armies. There were or were, were in service as the successor lords. The mech earned a positive reputation. Unfortunately, it also meant its expectations sometimes exceeded the design's actual capabilities. And with no new models being produced, Cicada's numbers began to dwindle. By the end of the Fourth Succession War, the mech was in danger of going extinct. The discovery of the Helm Memory Core, followed by the Free Worlds League Defense Industries to save the Cicada by restarting production of the mech from their newly refurbished production and or line on Gibson. The great majority of these newly built cicadas went to the Free Worlds League military, particularly Federated Sons, which was in desperate need for recon mechs after the loss of so many machines during their long battle with Ardean. The chassis was also the perfect platform to apply much of the now recovered lost tech, and the improved CDA-3M was introduced shortly before the start of the clan invasion. New cicadas were supplied to the Federated Commonwealth and the Draconis Combine as part of an agreement to combat the clans, and as reports filtered in from the front, more variants of the mech were produced. Following the Comstar schism, the Word of Blake relocated the Gibson or to Gibson, and an increased number of cicadas were produced directly to the Word of Blake militia, which quickly revived the FWLM as the largest cicada user. Um, as such, the mech was found on both sides of the jihad. The future of the cicada following the jihad seemed bleak due to the destruction of FWDI's Gibson Federated battle mechs. Were it not for aerospace focused Ardean Aerotech's decision to split from the FWDI in 3078 over the Blakist ties, with numerous anti Blakist FWDI battlemech designers opting to instead join the now independent AA. The company chose to branch out into mech manufacturing, refurbishing a long stuttered FWDI battle mech plant on Westover to create the Westover battle mechs, resuming production of the Cicada as its first product. Westover battle mechs would continue production for decades afterward, with its 4A model becoming a staple of the reunified Free Worlds League. All right, weapons and equipment. The Cicada is armed with two Magma medium lasers and a single Magma Mark I small laser, with the two heavier lasers mounted on either side of the torso and the third placed in the center. The weapons give the Cicada independence from the logistic support lines when necessary in exchange for a weapons loadout that has a higher than average amount of excess heat. They also give the Cicada sufficient firepower for taking down its intended target, other lighter mechs, and are well protected within that armored torso. Unfortunately, their placement also gives the lasers a limited firing arc, producing a blind spot an enemy can exploit if they get behind the Cicada. The 4 tons of armor on the Cicada is the same amount as found on the Locust, although most of it is concentrated in the torso. This leaves very little of the vestigial wing arms or in the legs. Speed of the Cicada's chief defense, which it achieves thanks to the Pitman 320 fusion engine, which accounts for over half the weight of the mech. The original Cicada 2A, produced by Hartford Co., used the Hartford J15B communication systems and Hartford S1000 targeting tracking system, while new ones introduced by FWDI used their own proprietary technology. The Cicada carries 10 single heat sinks. However, the original Hartford Co. models were discovered to wear out and fail to perform as expected after extended use. If not replaced, they would eventually operate at only 60% capacity, leading to serious overheating during combat. Although most cicadas had their heat sinks replaced with one more reliable modular models, some still use the defective models illustrated disastrously in much publicized battle on uh, Ornate between the Free Worlds League and the Compellian Confederation. Still, it was not until 3029 that the FWLM ordered all cicadas in both federal and provincial service to be upgraded. Now, the variants that we have is the 2B, part of the limited run experimental models in 2840. The 2B variant is a simple upgrade that exchanges the small laser and a half-ton of armor for a flamer, which makes this modification effective against infantry. Despite its small numbers, this variant did see combat during the Succession Wars and can be found in compelling Confederation training academies. The 3C, part of a limited run of experimental models in 2840, the 3C variant is an attempt to allow the mech to have a much greater reach with devastating results. To do this, it uses a smaller Vox 280 engine, reducing its maximum speed to 118.8 kilometers an hour. In place of the laser weapons are two machine guns in the legs and a Donnell PPC in the right torso. Despite its small numbers, this variant did see combat during the Succession Wars and can be found in the compelling Confederation training academies. The 3F. This Cicada is one of the most advanced versions of the mech, uh, with upgrades based on combat reports from the front lines of the clan invasion, and was introduced in 3052. The chassis has been constructed using the endo steel, and it's produced with 6.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor. The 3F is powered by an extra light engine and carries a weapons loadout that appears to be a cross between the 2A and 3C models, with a primary weapon being an ERPPC backed up by two medium lasers. What's more, the Cicada can now jump up to 240 meters thanks to the inclusion of 8 jump jets. The 3G, based off the same chassis of the 3F, the 3G was introduced in 3056 to transform the chassis into a more dedicated recon platform. It trades the PPC for an ER large laser, a Beagle active probe, and additional armor. Then we have the 3M. This upgrade of this older battle mech uses some of the newest technology available as it is introduced in 3049. It uses an extra light version of the same Pitbend 320 engine, freeing up extra space to upgrade the small laser to a small pulse laser and adding an Ultra AC5 to the left torso. The new ballistic weapon is fed by 1 ton of ammunition stored in the right torso and protected by case in the event of an ammo explosion. The 3-star slab armor has also been replaced by Duralex Light, although the amount of protection is the same as in the 2A. We have the 3MA, a training mech introduced in 3068. This variant of the 3M swaps the Ultra AC5 for a snub nose PPC and additional armor. Its primary purpose is to help introduce new technology to cadets. The 3P, an upgrade to the 3M introduced in 3070. The 3P uses a slightly smaller 280 rated engine, lowering the mech's top speed to 119 kilometers an hour. In order to replace the Ultra AC5 with a combine developed heavy PPC, while the lasers are replaced with 4 diverse optics ER medium lasers. Additional armor is added, though not as much as with the 3MA version. Finally, we have the 4A. The Ill-Clan era version of the Cicada from Westover Battlemechs is a evolution on the Scout role. The ferrofibrous armor and endosteel chassis keep the weight down, combined with an XL engine, which is equipped with a supercharger. Each side torso mounts a medium VSP laser, while the center torso is equipped with a medium re-energized laser. All right. I'm not going to get into the other variants that we have listed here. Let's see. The Cicada is subject to the following design quirks: no and or minimal arms. Related Omnimex, the Strider from Luthien Armor Works. Other notes here, though most of the artwork shows that the medium lasers are mounted in the Cicada's arms, according to the official record sheet, and the technical readout of 3039, they are installed in the side torso. It is unclear if this is an intentional or an error that never was fixed. In French products, the unit's proper name was translated to Sigal. So, all right, looking at the pictures that we have, and this was one thing that I was going to kind of mention myself. We do see that the arms look like they have the medium lasers in the arms, although it is clearly listed as being in the torso. And in the original 3025, we don't really see it being shown here in the torso. We see it in the arms and in the 3050, I believe this is, by Joe Bask and Jim Nelson. Let's see here. Yeah, from the tech readout of 3050, it still shows the medium lasers possibly being in the arms. Let's see, now we have from the 3050 upgrade, and now we are starting to see that the lasers are actually in the torso right there above the hip joint for the legs. A little bit of an odd placement there. You would think it would be in just a tad bit more, but it's how they have it drawn. This one is what they have on the core page here at sarna.net, and this one looks a little bit better for what its actual loadout is supposed to be. And this one comes to us by Aaron Harris. I do regret I didn't let you know who the last, some of the artists were in some of the last ones. And in this Cicada, it shows the arms having the medium lasers. One of the nice little things here is, much like the Locust, there are some variants where the arms, because it's essentially just a pod, you can swing that all the way around and you can fire behind you, which would be a nice placement for some medium lasers. Although I do want to note that, as it was stated, there is very little armor being placed in those said arms, and this is from Franz von Winkle. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. I apologize if I'm not. All right, and this is coming from the collector card game. Again, the lasers are being shown in the arms. Um, Going from there, and another one showing the lasers in the arms as well. And this is from Mike Jackson, another collector card game picture. Now, this one comes to us from a screenshot from Famous from MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. And this one does show the medium lasers in the torso. Let's see, we have two more here. So, the Cicada having very much the Locust look uh, compared to what we've been seeing. Um, and again, it does show the lasers being in the arms. And last but not least, here is a old resin miniature with the lasers again being in the arms. All right. Well, with all that, let's get on over to our D6 stats and see what we have here today. All right. So the Cicada being at Walker scale, like we've been doing with all the other ones, a crew of one. This is a 40 tonner. Passenger is a no go. Still keeping eight cargo capacity. We have listed here as 25 kilograms. Cost is 3,705,217 C-bills, give or take one or two. All right, we have a ground altitude. Now, the initial one, which is what I'm basing this off of, because that's what we have out of the 3025, we have a maneuverability being a 3D plus 2, going by my little records. Now, the weight would actually drop it down a little bit, but the fact that it has that higher speed brings it back up. So here we are. So its run speed initially is 129.6 kilometers an hour. That's why I have it listed as that for our move. Our jump is none from the base. Our body strength, being a 40 tonner, is a 3D plus 2. And it has 64 armor points on board. Now we do have our single small laser, center torso. Fire control is 2D, a damage of 4D, and we do have those two medium lasers, front firing arc, left and right torso, Walker scale. Fire control is 2D, and because they're fire linked, we have a damage of 6D. A simple loadout, but the fact that this was meant to be a heavier version of really the Locust and to compete directly with the Locust, although it is a little bit more expensive than the Locust, but hopefully the survivability is there, especially once we start getting into some of the more advanced ones where you have the endosteel and the ferrofibers armor, and you could max out its armor, really starts adding that extra survivability for something that is going that fast. Although, personally, out of my group, we would take a Clan XL engine a little bit more over than a Inner Sphere XL engine, because we're not going into the left and right torso as many spots. So you would get two um, engine hits instead of three if you lost a side torso. So you could still keep running, but you're at a kind of negative with your heat rate rising up from the two engine hits. So that was how we kind of played. Everybody's going to play a little differently. And I know you guys are going to tell me in the comments on your own personal interactions with these. Um, we didn't use the Cicada too much. Usually, for for our groups, if I was getting a light scout mech, we would stay with something a lot lighter, something that was a lot cheaper to be able to use. Once we started getting at this price range, I was starting to crunch numbers for something that had a little bit more firepower to it. But there again, when you're a house unit and you're not just a piddly little mercenary unit, you have a bigger budget to be able to play with. Something that we never really got to in our own little skirmishes and campaigns. So, with that being said, thank you so very much for joining me today. It's always wonderful having you here. I hope you're doing well, and I will see you in the next video.